Alright guys, welcome back into another fantasy football video. We're going to be going over the team outlook for the Miami Dolphins. Alright, in this video we're going to break down the fantasy assets for the Miami Dolphins. We're going to start with the quarterback, going to hit on the running backs. There's one running back that I really like. You can probably guess who that is. There's a receiver that I really like, and then we're going to go over the tight end and defense slightly. Let's get into it. All right, so starting off with the quarterbacks, it's going to be Ryan Fitzpatrick and Josh Rosen. We don't know which one is going to be the week one starter. You would kind of think that maybe Fitzpatrick is the quarterback until they're out of the playoffs, and then Josh Rosen is inserted in there. Now, we don't really know which one it's going to be. And fantasy-wise, from the quarterback standpoint, it doesn't matter. I don't think we're going to be starting either of these guys. We know who Ryan Fitzpatrick is as a quarterback. He's one of those guys that you can stream start if the matchup is good. And if the matchup is bad, you just drop him. That's pretty much how it goes. You have to look at the matchups with Ryan Fitzpatrick. And the thing with Fitzpatrick is I don't think he's going to be the season-long starter. I think eventually Josh Rosen will take over. It's just a matter of when. Josh Rosen, I don't think he's going to be a starter for us throughout the whole or any part of the fantasy football season, minus maybe a bye week fill-in when we don't want to drop our quarterback and we just kind of pick up Josh Rosen as a bye week fill-in quarterback. So that's pretty much it. I do think that the quarterback will matter in terms of running back and receiver, which players hold fantasy value that way, and we'll touch on that coming up here. All right, so let's talk about the running backs here. So we got Kenyan Drake, who's going to be the running back number one. Then we got Kalen Ballage. So Kalen Ballage had really only one good week last year, and pretty much throughout the whole year, I didn't think Kalen Ballage had any talent really. Watching the film, he just didn't seem like he had it. And then he had that one game where he just went off against the Vikings, and I was like, wait, hold up, wait a second, this guy's balling out. And then we saw throughout the rest of the year, he kind of regressed back to the player that he seemed like he was in his rookie year now. Plenty of running backs get better after their rookie year, and maybe Kalen Ballage can be that. But I think for now, Kalen Ballage is just going to be a handcuff. But I think he's going to be a really strong handcuff. And, if Kenyan Drake does go down, I think Kalen Ballage could easily be a top 15 running back for us. But right now, he's just going to be a handcuff. And let's talk about Kenyan Drake a little bit more. So Kenyan Drake, just looking back at last year, he had 8 starts. And those 8 starts, I calculate 8 starts as 9 or more fantasy points and a half-point PPR. So he had 8 starts, which really isn't bad. And that was only on 173 total touches. Okay, they did not want to give him touches last year. And it does seem like this coaching staff is going to give him an increased amount of touches. And I think we can project him to have about 50 more touches. If we give him 50 more touches, he's going to be ranked as around a 10th overall running back according to last year's data. So we'll touch on it a little bit more. So he had 179 fantasy points throughout the year. Per game, he had 11.2. Per points per touch, though, he ranked 8th throughout the year. And points per touch is going to be kind of a stat that we're going to be using going forward in fantasy football, I believe, especially with running backs catching the ball the backfield more. It's just something that we got to look at with the running backs now, with them catching the ball the backfield, with them taking the quick handoffs and stuff like that. So that's a stat that I like to look at. And the one thing about Kenyan Drake, too, he always is one of the league leaders in fantasy points per touch, yards per carry, yards after contact as well. We watched the film on Drake. He's pretty darn good on film as well. He had over 1,000 yards total, 9 total touchdowns. His current ADP is pick 50. He's going as RB26. I have him ranked as a top 15 running back, so I really like him. He is currently going in the late 4th, early 5th round, and to me, that's a nice steal for a guy that should be a starting running back and has a lot of upside. So go out and draft Kenyan Drake in your drafts right now. If you want to handcuff him with Kalen Ballage, feel free to. All right, getting into the receivers here. So the receivers that I like the most, well, we'll just touch on the 4 receivers that the Miami Dolphins have. So they have Kenny Stills, Devontae Parker, Albert Wilson, and Jakeem Grant. I think those are going to be the 4 that hold fantasy football value. So the first one, I think the proclaimed number 1 receiver for the Dolphins is going to be Kenny Stills. He is their best perimeter receiver, and I think this is where if Ryan Fitzpatrick is the quarterback, Kenny Stills is going to hold a little bit more fantasy value just because Fitzpatrick likes to take a little bit more chances with the deep ball. Josh Rosen is still developing that part of his game, but I just don't really like Kenny Stills as a fantasy football asset. We kind of know who he is as a receiver. That's not really going to change, I don't think. Now, Devontae Parker, yes, we know the talent that he has. If he plays a full season, he'll probably be a top 20, 25 receiver in fantasy football. That's just not likely, okay? But, I mean, if he does, yes, he's going to be a great asset for us. He's going to be more of a waiver wire watch for us throughout the year. The thing with Parker is I do think he'll be kind of like their number one red zone threat, I guess. They'll use him a lot in the red zone. And I think he also gains some value if Fitzpatrick is the quarterback, where if it's Josh Rosen, I don't really like him that much. Albert Wilson is the one I want to touch on the most here. So he actually ended up missing the last 9 games due to a hip injury, and he's actually projected to come back from that injury right around week 1. He says he's going to be ready around week 1, but we just, that's kind of something that we got to wait and see, get that news on in training camp. But the thing that I like about Albert Wilson, you look at what he did the first 7 games, he averaged 12 fantasy points per game. If we stretch that over the whole season, he would have been a top 15 fantasy football receiver last year. So that is just pretty darn amazing. Before he got injured, he actually averaged the most yards after catch as well. So Albert Wilson, I think I like him a lot, actually. Doesn't really matter which quarterback it is. I do think the Dolphins are going to try to do a lot of quick hitters, a lot of short passes, and I think that's where Albert Wilson excels. So I really do like Albert Wilson as a fantasy football asset. Now, like I said, he's projected to come back from his injury right around week 1. Whether or not he comes back week 1, we kind of got to wait and see. I don't know if we have to draft him, but I have him as my waiver wire watch. And just backtracking a little bit, Kenny Stills, he's going as receiver 59 right now. I probably just won't draft him. Devontae Parker, receiver 62 ADP wise. Albert Wilson, 74 ADP wise. None of those guys we have to draft. I think they can all just kind of be waiver wire watches. I think Albert Wilson is going to be the one that we end up owning right around week 3 of the waiver wire. But just guys you want to keep an eye on are Devontae Parker and Albert Wilson. The last one I want to touch on is just going to be more of a flyer. That's going to be Jakeem Grant. He's an extreme playmaker, and I think that they'll try to get the ball in his hands a little bit more with a little bit more quick passes. And if Albert Wilson is out for an extended period of time, I do think Jakeem Grant could hold some fantasy football value. Now, let's get into the tight ends. So tight ends, there's not really much there. I don't think either of these guys are going to hold fantasy football value. I think that the Dolphins are going to use the tight ends. They're not going to use the tight ends is pretty much what I'm trying to say. Instead of using the tight ends, they're going to use Jakeem Grant, Albert Wilson, Kenyan Drake, and those short, quick passes that they would kind of normally, you'd kind of see a tight end used. And, maybe one of these guys holds value, but right now we just don't want to draft either of them. And same thing goes for the defense. I can't trust the defense right now, but maybe as the fantasy football season goes on, we can see them. We'll be able to play that by ear. All right, that's all I have for you guys for this video. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and we'll have another fantasy football team outlook coming up here shortly. Thanks.